You saw that right. Fatecarver is no longer the strongest option for the Stamina Arcanist for single target damage dealing. The continuous nerfs to this class over the course of the last year, plus a buff that nobody really paid any attention to coming with update 43, has resulted in the Runeblades setup becoming the strongest option for the Stamina Arcanist on the dummy and very situationally in content. This video is going to cover what changed, the setup, a comparison between Fatecarver and Runeblades, and then finish with an analysis of how your build may change in content. But to understand this story well, we gotta take it all the way back to the beginning. Update 38 released the Necrom chapter in 2023, and with it came a brand new fan favorite class, our beloved Arcanist. Update 39 saw a surprising lack of adjustments to the class, but update 40 is where the story really begins. At the end of 2023, the Arc received a bit of an indirect nerf with changes to Pillar of Nirn. This resulted in a very small loss in damage, but a loss nonetheless, mainly on the dummy. Update 41, Scions of Athelia, though, saw some major changes that affected the Arc more than any other class. This included a 7% loss in the Arc's trademark ability, Fatecarver, as well as some changes to status effects and the charge trait that ended up helping some classes and hurting others. No class took a worse hit though than the Arcanist, since it is the only class that uniquely does increase damage with all status effects, but doesn't really have a reliable way of applying these consistently. The only status effects worth sourcing got mostly nerfed, and none of the other status effects gained enough relevance to be used over burning or poisoned. The biggest hit in this realm though was the changes to Trap, which nuked the Arc's ability to keep hemorrhaging up consistently, losing us nearly 5k DPS from this status effect alone. Update 42, Gold Road would cover up the fact that the Arc has lost about 10k single target between all of these changes with the release of the new set Highland Sentinel, a craftable from Gold Road that can most effectively be used on the dummy, and very rarely be used in content. At this point, it's well known that the Arc is not the best option for single target damage, but the utility of the class in content with its massive range of an AoE spammable, in addition to its passive crit damage and penetration bonuses, kept it the most used class despite the DK and the Plar performing a bit better in a lot of situations. Q Update 43, releasing in just a couple of weeks, brings two key changes. A nerf to Sifiliarch's Flail that lost us about 2 to 3k DPS with the ability, and a buff to the other morph, Tentacular Dread, which increased this morph's damage done per crux consumed by 33% up from 20%. This is a massive buff, and to understand the implications better, we need to talk about the setup. So let's start with what we know. The Arc most commonly runs Perfected Coral Riptide, the meta since the class came out, for two main reasons. The primary of which is that our 5.4 second spammable does not allow us to keep up the extremely powerful Reliquin like every other class in the game can. The other reason is based on the class's damage potential. For example, classes like the Sork, who can put out up to 150k on the dummy, will get more DPS out of sets that buff their damage, as opposed to a proc set. Reliquin can do 9 to 11k DPS, so if our damage is high enough that a set like Riptide would increase our DPS by more than 10 to 11k, Riptide will be stronger than Reli. The Arcanist used to fall into this category, and likely still does to some extent, but the nerfs to Fatecarver, status effects, and Flail have dramatically decreased the value of Riptide for this class. So much so that I tried a few different gear combos with the Fatecarver setup, and the new set from Lucent Citadel, Null Arca, on the front bar performed just 1k less than Perfected Riptide with similar damage potential. Having to run Riptide and having a 5-second spammable that is not direct damage takes away so many set options from this build that are currently meta. Reliquin, the VMA Greatsword, any monster set, the Kilt, and so many more. There's only so much that we can change with Fatecarver gear-wise. The last key point is that Fatecarver consumes Crux, which means that you have to run a skill that builds Crux. That skill has to be Sifiliarch's Flail. We need the 5% damage increase from Abyssal Ink, which Sifiliarch's Flail or Tentacular Dread apply, and Tentacular Dread consumes Crux, which would make Fatecarver useless. We can opt to use the other morph though when running Runeblades. In initial PTS testing for this class last year, there was a lot of playing around with Runeblades, and the setup seems to just be forgotten now that Fatecarver has been meta for so long. With the changes to Tentacular Dread, we now get 12.5k DPS out of this ability whenever it's used well, in addition to another 25k DPS out of Writhing Runeblades. Now, this is nothing on its own compared to the 52 to 54k DPS that we get out of Fatecarver, and an additional 7 to 8k that we get out of Flail. But not having a 5-second channeled spammable that doesn't do direct damage opens up a whole new world of sets that the Arc can run. So now we gain access to Reliquin, pairing it with Highland Sentinel, which gives us about 10k DPS, the Selene Monster set, which gives us another 8k DPS, the VMA Greatsword to buff mainly Runeblades and Dread, strong dots like Stampede and Carve, as well as giving us our light attack damage back since we dropped Velothi, adding about another 15k DPS from that alone. So while the Fatecarver setup has slowly and somewhat stealthily been getting nerfed, the Runeblade setup has slowly been getting buffed, with changes to the VMA Greatsword, Selene becoming relevant, Highland Sentinel being introduced, and Tentacular Dread getting buffed. Both of these parses are pretty solid crit-wise, though of course both can be better. We got 123.5k out of the Fatecarver setup and 127.6k out of the Runeblade setup. Now, I think that the Fatecarver setup with enough crit farming can get up to about 125k, but I also think that the Runeblade setup can surely be optimized to be a little bit stronger outside of my own creative theory crafting, and while I don't think that you'll get much more than 128 to 129k out of this particular build, I would not be shocked if one of these 21 mil masters came up with something a little bit stronger that broke 130. But with all of that said and done, the most important question that you should be asking is, how does this affect your build and content? Simply put, in a pure single target situation, the Runeblades build should be noticeably stronger than the Fatecarver build. However, I can count the amount of pure single target fights in the game on one hand. If there is any, and I mean any other target that is worth hitting, or even a fight that requires you to be ranged, Fatecarver will produce more damage. In addition to this, losing access to pragmatic Fatecarver will make progging content a bit more difficult, and the vast majority of the community is far more obsessed with clearing content and getting achievements as opposed to pushing the max potential damage. That's exhibited even now, hell, in my own groups where our console's first Lucent Citadel trifecta used both pragmatic Fatecarver and impervious Rune Ward. But it's worth considering, I think people forget how much of a damage loss pragmatic is, especially post-nerf. The skill is just not very good for DPS. So will the arc meta change? Maybe not, but what this does open up is a fantastic new playstyle for Arcanist enjoyers and a new consideration for those of us interested in min-maxing raid comps to take into account. Now, most realistically, if I want single target damage, I'm not going to look at a Runeblades arc. I'm just going to get an extra DK or Plar. But what this should call into consideration is how heavily the Fatecarver build has fallen, and how much more worthwhile it'll be using other classes in your raid comp if your goal is maximizing damage. Now, in AoE fights, or even just progression scenarios in general, you can make a really strong case for this class regardless. And on top of that, maybe you have some better ideas than I do. Let me know what you think of these changes and the new state of the Arcanist in Update 43 in the comments section below. And if you want to stay up to date on all of the major changes coming with ESO and how those changes are going to affect endgame PvE content, be sure to subscribe to the channel and do me a favor, hit that like button on the video while you're at it. I have a lot of plans in the near future regarding build guides and just content in general that we're going to do on the YouTube channel, so make sure that you get your first look at it. A special shout out and thank you to all of my current Patreons who make this content possible. Clyde, Alberg, Larry, Carla, Joseph, and Rain, thank you so much for your support, my friends. It's because of you that this content is made possible. And thanks to all of you for all of your love and support. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you in the next one.